Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles. It was a Friday evening, the kind where the week's fatigue settles like a fog, making the house feel quieter than it should. The smell of takeout lingered in the air, and I was sitting at the dining table, absent-mindedly scrolling through emails. My wife, Laura, stood in the kitchen, her back to me, chopping vegetables she didn't need to chop. Her movements were mechanical, her silence louder than usual. "I need to tell you something," she said, not looking up. Her tone was clipped, devoid of emotion. I glanced up, already sensing that whatever was about to come out of her mouth wasn't good. "What's on your mind?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She stopped chopping, set the knife down with precision, and turned to face me. There was something unsettling in the way she folded her arms across her chest, like she was bracing herself for impact. "I've been seeing someone," she said flatly, her words falling like stones into the stillness of the room. For a moment I didn't react. My brain refused to process what I had just heard. It was as if she'd spoken in a foreign language, and I needed a translator to make sense of it. "What?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been seeing someone else," she repeated, her eyes locking onto mine. "And I'm going to keep seeing him." The air left my lungs in a single, audible exhale. What? What are you saying, Laura?" She sighed, as if I were the one being difficult. "I need something more," she said. "Something exciting. Something different. But I still love you, and I don't want to leave you. We can keep what we have, but I also need this. I need him." Her words were so absurd, so unfathomable, that I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I stared at her, searching her face for some sign of regret, guilt, anything that would tell me this was a momentary lapse in judgment. But there was nothing, just cold, calculated resolve. "You need him?" I repeated, my voice rising. "What the hell does that even mean? Are you seriously standing there and telling me you want to have your cake and eat it too?" "It doesn't have to change anything between us," she said, as if that made it better. "We can still have a life together. Still be us." I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. My hands were trembling, so I clenched them into fists at my sides. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. 6 months, she admitted, her tone eerily calm. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of her sharing herself with someone else while I worked late, made her coffee in the mornings, and kissed her goodnight, thinking we were still a team. "Who is he?" I asked. My voice was quiet now, cold and sharp like a blade. "It doesn't matter," she said, shaking her head. "That's not the point." "The hell it isn't," I snapped. "Who is he?" She hesitated just for a moment. "Someone I met at work." Of course. The late nights, the sudden enthusiasm for office outings. It all made sense now. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. "Unbelievable," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "And you just assumed I'd be okay with this? That I'd just share you?" "I didn't assume anything," she said, her voice rising for the first time. "I'm telling you how I feel. I'm being honest with you, which is more than I can say for most people in my position. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you how it is." I stared at her, stunned by her audacity. There was no apology, no attempt to soften the blow. Just this brazen declaration, as if she were doing me a favor by being honest. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the distant hum of the refrigerator. Finally, I said, "You know what? You're right. You're not asking for permission, and I'm not giving it." Her brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" "You'll see," I said, turning and walking out of the kitchen. My heart was pounding in my chest, but my mind was already racing ahead, forming a plan. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I didn't beg or plead or try to make her see reason. No, I would do none of that, because in that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft, rhythmic sound of Laura's breathing beside me. How could she sleep so soundly after dropping a bomb like that? I glanced at her silhouette in the dim light, feeling an unfamiliar mixture of disgust and pity. For 6 months, she had carried on this betrayal, coming home to me with the same smile, the same kisses, the same casual conversations about her day. The thought of her in another man's arms, laughing, kissing, touching, made my stomach turn. But more than anger, I felt something else, something colder, resolve. By the time the first rays of sunlight pierced through the blinds, I had already started to form a plan. It wouldn't be rash or impulsive. No, I'd play the long game. If she wanted to see other men and still expect me to be here, waiting like a fool, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The next morning, I acted as if nothing had happened. I made coffee the same way I always did, 1 sugar for me, 2 for her. I even kissed her cheek as she sat at the dining table scrolling through her phone, her expression annoyingly serene. "Heading to work early today," I said casually. "Big project?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah, something like that." I didn't wait for her response. I grabbed my briefcase and left the house, my mind racing as I drove to the bank. Over the next week, I began the careful process of dismantling our shared life. First, the money. I transferred every cent from our joint account into one in my name alone. To avoid suspicion, I did it in increments, a few thousand here, a few thousand there. It wasn't hard. Laura rarely checked the account unless she needed something specific, and even then, she wasn't the type to dig too deep. Next, I started selling off the things that mattered most to her. The designer handbags she'd collected over the years. The jewelry she insisted she rarely wore but refused to part with. I listed them online, selling them quietly to buyers who paid in cash. I didn't touch the furniture or anything obvious. Not yet. I needed her to believe that everything was normal. In the evenings, I played my part. I laughed at her jokes, nodded along to her stories, and even pretended not to notice when she stayed out late. Each time she walked through the door smelling of a perfume I didn't recognize, I clenched my teeth and reminded myself that this was temporary. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wanted to explode, to confront her, to make her feel the pain she was inflicting on me. But I stayed calm, collected. One night, as I lay awake while she slept beside me, my thoughts drifted to the past, to the woman I thought I married. Laura and I had met at a mutual friend's party. She'd been radiant, full of energy, and I'd been captivated by her confidence. She was the kind of person who lit up a room, who made you feel like you were the only one that mattered. I fell hard and fast, and when she said yes to marrying me, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. But now, as I thought back on our years together, I began to see things differently. The way she always had to be the center of attention. The way she dismissed my concerns with a laugh or a wave of her hand. The way she always seemed to need more excitement, more validation, more everything. The cracks had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. By the end of the week, I had drained our accounts, sold what I could, and packed a few essentials. A suitcase of clothes, important documents, and the things that mattered most to me, not her. On Saturday morning, Laura announced she'd be out for the day. "Going to the spa with some friends," she said, tossing her hair over her shoulder as she sipped her coffee. "Have fun," I said with a smile, knowing full well she was lying. As soon as she left, I sprang into action. I loaded the packed suitcase into my car, along with a few boxes of things I couldn't sell but didn't want to leave behind. Then I walked through the house one last time, taking in the life we'd built together. The photos on the walls, the furniture we picked out, the little mementos from vacations and anniversaries. It all felt hollow now, like props in a play I no longer wanted to star in. Before I left, I wrote a note. Just a few lines, nothing too dramatic. I wanted her to understand that I knew, that I had been ahead of her all along. When I was done, I set the note on the kitchen counter, took one last look around, and walked out the door. As I drove away, a strange sense of calm washed over me. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control. Laura thought she could have it all, but she was about to learn what it felt like to lose everything. I didn't know where I was going yet, but that didn't matter. Wherever I ended up, it would be better than staying in a house full of lies. I checked into a modest hotel on the other side of town. the kind of place where no one asks questions as long as you pay in advance. The room smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and stale coffee, but I didn't care. It wasn't home, and that was the point. I dropped my suitcase onto the bed and sat down heavily beside it. The silence was deafening. For the first time since Laura's confession, I let myself truly feel the weight of it all. Anger, betrayal, humiliation, they churned inside me like a storm, threatening to pull me under. But I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. Not yet. The next step was to ensure that Laura's world collapsed the way mine had. The house was legally mine, an inheritance from my father, but I had never insisted on a formal agreement to clarify ownership. I knew Laura wouldn't think twice about trying to claim it as hers. She had always treated it like a trophy, something to show off to her friends rather than a home we'd built together. The idea of her bringing another man into that house, our house, made my skin crawl. So I made arrangements to list it for sale. By the time she realized what was happening, it would be too late for her to stop it. The money I'd transferred into my private account was another safety net. I kept meticulous records of every transaction, ensuring there would be no loose ends for her to exploit. Laura had a knack for manipulation, but I wouldn't leave her a single thread to pull. That week, I began to untangle myself from her life entirely. I reached out to our utility providers and canceled every service in my name: electricity, water, internet, the works. I redirected my mail to a P.O. box I'd set up downtown and updated all my accounts with a new address and phone number. Each step was a small victory, a quiet reclamation of my independence. While I worked through the logistics, my mind kept drifting to Laura. I imagined her coming home to an empty house, her carefully curated life unraveling before her eyes. Would she cry, scream, call me, begging for an explanation? Part of me wanted to be there to see it, to witness her facade crack and crumble. But another part of me, the stronger part, knew it didn't matter. I didn't owe her that satisfaction. By midweek, I had a strange encounter that gave me unexpected clarity. I stopped by a diner for lunch, one of those old-fashioned places with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. As I sat waiting for my sandwich, a couple walked in. A man and a woman, laughing and holding hands like teenagers. For a moment, I felt a pang of jealousy. They seemed so carefree, so connected, like Laura and I used to be. But as I watched them slide into a booth, I noticed something odd. The man kept checking his phone, barely glancing at the woman as she talked. She, in turn, forced her laughter, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for something or someone else. It was a hollow performance, a relationship held together by appearances rather than substance. I realized then that I'd been clinging to an illusion. Laura and I hadn't been happy in years, not really. We'd been playing roles in a script that neither of us believed in anymore. Her betrayal hurt, but in some twisted way it also freed me. On Thursday night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello." There was a pause, followed by Laura's voice. "Where are you?" Her tone wasn't angry or pleading. It was cold, almost businesslike. "I'm where I need to be," I said, keeping my voice steady. "What does that mean?" she demanded. "You disappear, empty the bank account, and leave me with nothing? Are you trying to punish me?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Punish you? You're the one who decided to blow up our marriage, Laura. I'm just making sure I'm not collateral damage." "You're being childish," she snapped. "We could have worked this out like adults." "Adults?" I echoed. "Is that what you call sneaking around for 6 months and then announcing you want to sleep with other men while keeping me as your backup? That's not adult, Laura. That's selfish." She was silent for a moment, and I imagined her standing in the empty house, gripping the phone tightly, her nails digging into her palm. "You think you've won, don't you?" she finally said, her voice low and venomous. "This isn't a game," I said quietly. "It's my life, and I'm taking it back." I hung up before she could respond. As I stared at the phone in my hand, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Triumph, yes, but also sadness. I had loved Laura once, with everything I had. And now, here we were, two people who had shared a life reduced to adversaries. But even as the sadness lingered, I knew I had made the right choice. There was no going back now. The cracks in the foundation of our marriage had been there all along. Laura's betrayal had simply shattered what was left, and I was finally free to build something new. Saturday morning came with an eerie stillness. It was the kind of quiet that pressed against my ears, amplifying every creak of the floorboards and rustle of the wind. Laura had already left for her spa day, which I knew was code for meeting him. That knowledge didn't sting as much anymore. If anything, it fueled me to execute my plan with precision. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the blank sheet of paper in front of me. A part of me wanted to write something scathing, to detail every betrayal, every ounce of pain she had caused. But I stopped myself. Laura didn't deserve the satisfaction of knowing she had gotten under my skin. Instead, I kept it simple. You made your choice. So did I. Goodbye. I placed the note on the counter, its starkness matching the emptiness I'd carefully crafted in the house. The movers had arrived an hour earlier, their footsteps heavy on the hardwood as they hauled away what remained of the furniture. The living room, once filled with warmth and laughter, was now barren, the walls bare, the echoes of our past life erased. The boxes I hadn't sold were stacked neatly in the back of my car, and the rest, the little reminders of our life together, were left behind like remnants of a storm. I walked through the house one last time, each room a monument to what once was. The bedroom, where we'd shared whispered secrets and late-night laughter, now felt like a hollow shell. The dining room, where we'd hosted friends and celebrated anniversaries, was just an empty space. And the kitchen, where she had stood just days ago, telling me she would keep seeing him, felt colder than ever. As I locked the front door for the last time, I didn't feel sadness or regret. I felt relief. I dropped the keys in the mailbox, a final severance of my ties to this place. Driving away, I thought about what she would find when she returned. An empty house, no money, and a note that said everything I needed to say. I could almost see the look on her face, confusion morphing into anger, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. I didn't stay to see it. There was nothing left for me there. I checked into a new hotel that afternoon, this one a little nicer, with clean sheets and a view of the city skyline. As I unpacked my suitcase, I realized how little I had brought with me. A few changes of clothes, important documents, a photo of my parents from before they passed. No pictures of Laura. No mementos of our life together. It was as if she had already become a ghost, her presence fading with each passing hour. That evening, I sat by the window, a glass of whiskey in hand, and watched the city lights flicker to life. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. I wasn't naive enough to think that everything would be easy from here. Starting over would be hard, lonely even, but it was better than living a lie. I thought about Laura, about the life she had chosen. Maybe she would try to contact me again, to plead or curse or justify her actions. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, it didn't matter. She had made her choice, and so had I. I expected the call to come sooner, but it didn't. The weekend passed quietly, and by Monday morning, I began to wonder if she'd even noticed the house was empty. Perhaps she'd stayed with him, her lover, and my absence was a welcome reprieve. But when the phone rang late Monday evening, her name lit up the screen. I stared at it for a moment, debating whether to answer. The last time we'd spoken, I had made it clear where I stood. What more could she possibly want? Curiosity got the better of me. Hello. What the hell, Nathan? She snapped.
No greeting, no hesitation.
Just raw, unfiltered anger. Good evening to you too, Laura, I said, my tone calm, almost amused. Don't play games with me, she hissed. Where are you? And what did you do to the house? I leaned back in the chair, letting the silence stretch just long enough to unsettle her. I don't know what you mean, I said finally. What's wrong with the house? It's empty, she shouted. Everything is gone. The furniture, the money, all of it. Where's my stuff, Nathan? Your stuff, I echoed, feigning confusion. You mean our stuff? The things we bought together with my money? Those things. You had no right, she spat. her voice cracking with frustration. I had every right, I said, my tone hardening. You made it clear, Laura. You wanted your freedom, your excitement, your something more. So I gave it to you. You're free. Enjoy it. For a moment, there was only the sound of her breathing, ragged and uneven. I could picture her pacing the empty house, her perfectly curated life reduced to nothing but echoes. You're pathetic, she said finally, her voice low and venomous. This is your way of getting back at me? Taking everything and running away? You're a coward. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Coward? That's rich, coming from the woman who lied to her husband for 6 months and expected him to just accept it. You thought you could keep me on a leash while you played house with someone else. Who's the coward, Laura? She didn't respond immediately, but I could hear her breathing quicken. You won't get away with this, she said. I'll take you to court. I'll get everything back. You can try, I said. But the house was mine before we got married. The accounts are in my name, and I've got receipts for every dollar I took. Good luck explaining to a judge why your husband should have to fund your affair. Her silence was deafening. For the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand, and it wasn't about power, it was about closure. I wasn't the fool she thought I was. You ruined everything, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper.
No, Irraplia.
You did that all on your own. I ended the call and blocked her number. In the days that followed, I allowed myself small moments of satisfaction imagining her trying to pick up the pieces. She would have to figure out how to pay the bills, find a way to explain the situation to her friends, and confront the reality of what she had done. But even as I thought about her, I found myself caring less with each passing day. Her betrayal had been the catalyst, but now her existence no longer defined mine. One evening, while unpacking in my new apartment, I found a small box I had almost forgotten about. Inside was a collection of photographs, old memories of happier times. I hesitated for a moment, then sifted through them. There we were on our honeymoon, smiling on a sun-drenched beach. A picture from our first Christmas together. The tree lopsided but decorated with care. A candid shot of Laura laughing, her head thrown back in pure, unguarded joy. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sadness. These weren't the memories of a woman who would betray me. They were memories of someone who, at one point, truly loved me, or at least I believed she had. But that version of her was gone. And so was the man who had once adored her. Without hesitation, I closed the box and set it aside. Maybe one day I'd decide to throw it away. But for now, it was just another artifact of a life I had left behind. By the end of the week, I had settled into my new routine. Work, gym, a drink at the corner bar. My apartment was small but cozy, filled with only the things I needed and nothing more. One night, as I sat by the window watching the city lights, I thought about what lay ahead. Starting over wouldn't be easy, but it wasn't supposed to be. Growth came from struggle, and I was ready to grow. Laura had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking forward, unburdened by the weight of someone else's expectations. The cracks in our marriage had been there for a long time, but now I could finally see the light shining through. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.